What's up, everybody? This is the Booch, and welcome to episode 2 of the Boochcast reviews, Darkside of the 2000s, and we are back with another episode, and I'm very excited to jump into this topic now. Before I go any further, I do have to make a little announcement here. When I originally planned to put this episode out, I was supposed to have a special guest with me, and that was, of course, my former friend, Goth Batty, was supposed to join me for this episode. But obviously, as you guys know by now, we had a falling out. So obviously, she's not going to be doing this or any other projects that we have in the future. However, I do have a Roseanne Barr Darkside of Comedy episode to be released at a later date, or if it's out right now at the time you're watching this, go check that out. That will be the one and only video appearance of Goth Batty here on the Boochcast. But right now, we're not going to worry about that. We're going to jump into this week's episodes. I'm very excited to get into this because back in the day when I was a young lad and we used to watch music videos on MTV back when music videos were a thing. We actually watched music videos, and MTV mostly revolved around music. There was one show that used to always come on that we always looked forward to seeing, and that is, of course, Total Request Live. We're here to talk about TRL, The Last Request, here on the Boochcast. So for all of us 90s and 2000s kids that enjoyed this moment, it's time for us to get it started. In the 2000s, one cable show will transform pop music, and that show is Total Request Live. TRL gives everyone with a TV and a phone the power to help decide which music videos get played. Because that was the basis of TRL, was you watch the show, people would call in with requests, people would vote, and music videos would play from different artists. But we, the people, got to decide which music videos got played. It's not like they made their own list. It was chosen by the people, and obviously they would have music videos to play for whatever reason they weren't getting any calls, but it was very, very rare where people weren't calling into TRL. Fans began mobbing the show's New York City studio. They shut down Times Square. It was chaos. You're watching people lose their shit, and that leads some to lose their minds because fans genuinely love this show, and there's a variety of reasons why people love this show, but I'm so excited I don't want to jump ahead of the review. But let's just say they had the largest fan base of any show I had seen during this time. Before the world was an internet search away, Total Request Live becomes the place to see and sometimes touch emerging stars of pop music. And those are musicians from NSYNC, 98 Degrees, Korn, Limp Bizkit, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Eminem, Mariah Carey, and others. So these artists would frequent TRL, and if you were lucky enough to be inside the studio, because it's a very small studio, so only a select group of fans actually got to be inside, the rest of us had to wait outside, you would get a chance to see the artist, shake their hands, give them a hug, whatever. Like, this was a place for fans to see their favorite stars. And it also elevated a lot of these musicians' careers. Now, obviously, NSYNC, very, very popular in the 2000s. Great band. They're so popular, they recently reunited and fans went crazy. 98 Degrees, they were also a great band. Somebody I listened to, I'm not gonna lie. The one song I like by them is Give Me Just One Night, Una Noche, a moment to be by your side. Like, I love that song. And of course, Nick Lachey is somebody you see regularly on the show Love is Blind. In fact, at the time that I'm sitting here recording this, I know season 7 of Love is Blind is right around the corner, and I'm looking forward to that. And of course, Korn was another great band. If Zach was here right now, he'd be marking out because he's a huge Korn fan. To me, they were okay. Like, I like Freak on a Leash, but that's the extent of my Korn fandom. Limp Bizkit, that was my shit. I was a huge Limp Bizkit fan. I still am. I hate the fact that I didn't get to see them when they came to Alpharetta recently, but that's only because, sadly, I could not afford tickets to go, which kind of pissed me off. But that is something on my bucket list, is to go see Limp Bizkit live in concert. I want to be able to do that at least once in my life. And I can't help but feel like I missed my opportunity. If Limp Bizkit does go on tour again, I hope they hit Georgia somewhere and I'll be able to go see them. Or if I'm able to afford to travel to places, I may just go to where they are. Like if they're performing in Florida and I got the money, I may just fucking drive to Florida or somewhere else. Like I want to see Limp Bizkit in concert. Britney Spears, we all know Britney Spears, love Britney Spears, aside from the fact that she's gone a little cuckoo crazy, but we'll touch more on Britney next week. Christina Aguilera, like Christina, some of her songs. Eminem, best rapper alive today. Yes, I said it. Eminem is the GOAT. I call him the third greatest rapper of all time and the best rapper alive today. There's only two rappers who are truly better than him, and that's Tupac and Biggie, who we touched on in the East Coast, West Coast Darkside of the 90s episode. And of course, Mariah Carey, awesome. All I Want for Christmas Is You. It's a song that everybody loves and hates, but it's made her iconic. Starting out as a simple pre-recorded countdown show on MTV, TRL becomes must-see TV for the millennial generation. On TRL, the audience decides what music gets played, and that empowers teens to express their opinions years before social media. So this is why TRL was so powerful, because it gave the younger generation a voice that it was desperately looking for. Because not a lot of things cater to the younger generation. So when something like this gives a younger generation power, it makes us excited and gets us wanting to be more emotionally invested and involved in something. And that's why young kids love TRL. It gave them power and it gave them a voice. But TRL's rocket ship ride to pop culture dominance is born out of MTV losing altitude as the 90s come to an end. And here on the Boochcast YouTube channel, if you go to the Darkside of the 90s playlist that we have here on the channel, you can go to MTV and the real world, and we talk all about MTV, all about the real world, and the history of MTV. Now, TRL doesn't really get mentioned in that one, because we're talking about it right here, but you can talk about MTV in the real world. Go check that out if you want to hear more about the history of MTV. We cover it there, Zach and I. Qudus was the first host of TRL, and his name was spelled Quddus. I'm probably mispronouncing that, and I'm sorry if I am, but couldn't pronounce his name back then, can't do it now. MTV threw a lot of parties and had events like Beach House and Spring Break. Those were big events. In fact, I remember Buff Bagwell and the other WCW guys, the NWO, they were part of the Spring Break, and Buff actually got in trouble because he was hyping up the crowd by saying, "Who wants to see some fucking pussy?" And the crowd cheered, and MTV was kind of like, I can't really do that, Buff. But keeping the party going proves difficult. They had to reconfigure what they're doing to appear hip and cutting edge. And by the mid-90s, the newest generation of teen viewers stopped buying what MTV is selling. Because now there's a new generation in town, and some of the music that they're playing doesn't really relate to our generation. Because when you're a kid, you have your own music that you like. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to be different than what your parents like. Because when you're a kid, you mostly listen to your parents' music. You grew up with what they were watching, like I did. My mother listened to disco. My father listened to the Beatles. My father listened to Michael Jackson. My father would listen to Bon Jovi. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some disco songs that I like. There's a lot of Beatles songs that I like. I like Michael Jackson music, and Bon Jovi, big fan, as I mentioned before. Wanted Dead or Alive is my go-to karaoke song. So I have no hate for any of those bands. But there were some other bands that I did like that my parents weren't necessarily fans of that I wanted to see more of. And after a certain point, we're just kind of like, look, this ain't for us. This was for our parents, and we're not really feeling it. MTV's second attempt at rebranding begins with a flashy new home in New York City. In 1997, MTV takes over a vacant bank on the second floor of 1515 Broadway and transforms it into a glass-fronted TV studio. It's the window into a new MTV. So they basically found a bank that didn't exist anymore and changed it into TRL. And it's on the second floor of this building. So on 1515 Broadway, that's where most people in New York City would see TRL. So in the process of creating this new show and trying to make it fan interactive, TRL was created by Bob Cusbit, who was the head of production at MTV from 1997 to 2003. 3 weeks into the job, MTV had him fire all the VJs except for Kennedy and Bill Bellamy and hire new people to actually launch the programming in the new studio. Now, VJ, if y'all don't know, is a term they use for video DJs. So it's like a DJ, it's like a disc jockey, or a guy who does like, spins records. VJ is somebody that does that, but with music videos. In the summer of 1997, one of those new hires is 24-year-old disc jockey Carson Daly. Carson was a DJ at KROQ in Los Angeles, so he was hired as a summer VJ. MTV was looking for people who knew music, loved music, and were going to be great music ambassadors to the audience. He wasn't a rock star or a celebrity, but he knew music inside and out. So he was a music expert, so that's why they hired him. And they were hoping to use that to launch TRL. And Carson Daly is the guy most known for TRL. Carson Daly's career, and we're going to get to more of this in a minute, he becomes a celebrity because of the success of TRL. And I also like the fact that MTV was looking for somebody that understood music. Because keep in mind, this is back when MTV was still very much a music-based show. It hadn't gone full reality TV yet. They had The Real World, but that's about as far as they went. They were still very centered around music. It was still legit music television during this time. TRL was originally called MTV Live. At first, they didn't have an audience. It was live and in the Times Square studio. It was basically a talk show, and it didn't rate great. They spent a year trying to figure out what should the show be in that studio. So they're trying to find their voice right now. They're trying to figure out what can we do. We're experimenting. They're understanding that right now they're not sure what to do. They're just kind of up in the air with shit. So this is a lot of trial and error. Now, as MTV Live struggled to find its identity in New York, their salvation is waiting to be discovered 1,000 miles south in Orlando. Orlando was the birth of pop music. This is where pop music started. This is where pop music got its thing. In the 90s, the casting of Disney's new Mickey Mouse Club lures many up-and-coming performers to Orlando. The bubblegum pop stars came out of this show, like Britney Spears, Ryan Gosling, Kerry Russell, Christina Aguilera, J.C. Chazez, and Justin Timberlake. Now, Nick Carter was casted, but he left to join the Backstreet Boys. So Nick Carter was supposed to be on the Mickey Mouse Club, but he left when the Backstreet Boys came in, and obviously I think we can speak for everyone when I say wise decision. Obviously, Nick Carter had more success in the Backstreet Boys than he would have on the Mickey Mouse Club. And of course, Ryan Gosling, he's been a star in many films. He's a teenage heartthrob, or was a teenage heartthrob. Now he's an adult heartthrob. Kerry Russell, we all know as Felicity. She was also in Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, Planet of the Apes, We Are Soldiers, multiple great films. And of course, J.C. Chazez and Justin Timberlake were the two main vocalists in NSYNC. And there was someone who saw an opportunity to cash in. Florida-based businessman Lou Pearlman starts engineering pop acts to appeal to teen girls. He starts with the Backstreet Boys, then signs the recently assembled NSYNC. By mid-decade, he's churning out boy bands like O-Town, Take 5, LFO. Orlando was to pop music what Seattle was to grunge. So, of course, I mentioned grunge a lot. We have grunge in the Seattle sound. You can check that episode out on Darkside of the 90s as well if you want to learn more about the grunge lifestyle. And of course, I did listen to some of the other boy bands as well. Now, Take 5, I don't really know much about them. But O-Town and LFO, a lot of us know them because they had a lot of great songs like All or Nothing. 'Cause I want it all or nothing at all. There's nowhere left to fall. When you reach the bottom, it's now or never. Is it all? Or are we just friends? Is this how it ends? With a simple telephone call, you leave me here with nothing at all. And then, of course, LFO, one of their best songs was Girl on TV. I wish, wish, wish for you on a falling star. Wondering where you are. Do I ever cross your mind? In the warm sunshine, she's from the city of angels, like Betty Davis, James Dean, and Gable. Never know what she means to me. I fell for the girl that's on TV. Like, these guys were great bands and very entertaining, fun to watch. And if you were a girl, you were swooning over them. But grunge is still king. So Perlman ships his new princes of pop off to Europe to prove there's an audience for their upbeat song and dance. So while grunge is still running America, he decides to go to England, Lou Pearlman, and get this band up and running. Now, there were boy bands from all over the UK and even Germany part of this festival. Over there, it was cool to be in a boy band. Not just cool. In Europe, bands like NSYNC become household names while kids in the US have still never heard of them. So long before we even know who these bands are, before we see them on TV, before we see them on TRL, before we're buying tickets, before we're seeing them in concert, in the UK, they're already stars. So they established themselves in the UK, so when they come to America, they can build a fan base here. But in the UK, they're already gods, which is brilliant. You get over in one country, you can cross over to another country. They were performing in front of 800 to 1,000 kids a night, and they had 7 security guards around them. They felt like they were in a different world, mostly because they were. But these worlds will soon collide because in 1997, boy band mania takes over the US. And MTV discovers what will drive its next great reinvention. It starts with the song Bop by Hanson. And then came the Backstreet Boys, then NSYNC, then Britney, then 98 Degrees, then Christina. Pop was big and they needed to harness its power. So Hanson kicks off the whole thing. And Hanson was huge back then. Now, of course, Hanson did have its detractors, but I remember Hanson being a big fan of them, especially when I was in elementary school. So my love for Hanson went way back. And of course, Middle of Nowhere to this day is an album that if you grew up in the 2000s, you had that album somewhere, especially in the late 90s. You had it as well. I had a friend, Louie. We used to jam out to that. And Bop, my generation, I would put that up there as a candidate for one of my generation's national anthems. I'm sure if we got a lot of 90s kids or 2000s kids together, we could have a debate, hopefully a healthy one, about what our national anthem is. But I would put Bop up as a potential candidate because that song, everyone knew it. You have so many relationships in this life, only one or two will last. You go through all the pain and strife, you turn your back and they're gone so fast. Oh yeah, and they're gone so fast. Yeah. Oh, so hard the ones who really care. In the end, they'll be the only ones there. And when you get old and start losing your hair, can you tell me who will still care? Can you tell me who will still care? Oh, who care? Ba do ba da ba do wop do do ba do wop bin da da ba do yeah yeah. All right, I apologize if the high note sounds terrible, but fuck it, I gave my best shot. That song, everybody knew. And that was something that I didn't think about at the time. And also, what's weird is when you're a kid, unless you knew the lyrics, you had like a lyric sheet in front of you, which I'll break the fourth wall. I definitely have one in front of me right now. You had no idea what the fuck the lyrics were, but you would sing that shit and you loved it. And it was great. This song was definitely old school and very, very fun to sing. It was a guilty pleasure for a lot of people. A lot of people. Because there was a time where being a fan of Hanson wasn't cool. Today, it's more accepting. MTV retools the struggling MTV Live by adding a pop music countdown voted on by viewers and rebrands it as Total Request Live, a show devoted to revealing the nation's top music videos each afternoon from MTV's Times Square studio. So every day there'd be a top 10 list of music videos. And they would go down the list. Here's number 10. They play the music video in its entirety. Then come back and do some interviews, play the next one, and the next one, all the way down to number 1. And you were glued to your screen because you wanted to make sure you got the countdown and made sure your favorite made it to number 1. They started off by using percentages to hide the fact that not a lot of people were voting in the beginning. It was better to say 30% than you got 3 votes. So they were very careful and meticulous with how they're hiding it because they're worried if people say you got 3 votes, people are going to think, well, this show sucks and we're not going to tune in. But if you hear 30%, you're thinking, oh, I got to call to get the video in and catch it up. So there's a lot of ways where people try to hide reality. I touched a little bit about that on last week's Darkside episode, but obviously this is one that's not as major as the shit I was talking about last time. but I'm not going to get into that because this is a happy episode and I want to be happy. Carson had no fanfare, and Carson would just announce the top 10 videos. It was a very simple format, and they had no studio audience. That'll change when MTV discovers broadcasting TRL live from a studio in Times Square literally brings an audience to the show because they have that open window. So naturally, people are going to come in. People are going to want to see what's going on. And then they start to think, well, maybe we need to bring some people in and make this more interesting. And Carson, he's unbiased. He's a music guy. So he just goes down the format. He goes through everything. He is going through the motions. Because when you're a host of a show and you got a network telling you what to do, as a good employee, you follow what you're doing. They see a guy outside with a sign that says, "Carson, bring me up." So they tell Carson to bring him up, and they chat with him in the studio. The next day, a couple of people with signs all wanting to go up. Next week, there's 30 people. So this is how the fan audience thing began, because they're trying to fill the time in between the top 10 music videos. So they brought him in, talked to him, so now, oh, if they'll let him in, maybe they'll let me in. And then now there's like all these people wanting to come in and talk, and they're doing it and talking and doing all this other stuff and all this fun shit. So they're like, hell yeah, let's do it. So fuck it, let's get an audience. Now, millennials felt comfortable being on camera because they were constantly recorded by their parents and told them everything they did was interesting and great. So they felt they were interesting enough to be on camera. And this touches on a little bit of what I talked about in the Buff Bagwell Darkside of the Ring review that Zach and I did. We talked about how growing up, Buff said his parents told him he was special. They told all their kids they were special and they were all going to do great things one day. Because every parent thinks their kid is special and their kid is wonderful and awesome. And there's a lot of truth to this because when I was a kid growing up, and I talk about this in my stand-up act, my mother was very much a let me get the camera type of parent. Anytime I was doing something, my mother was like, I gotta get the camera. We have a lot of home videos in our house, home movies. In fact, a few years ago, my mother got these cassette tapes and got them converted to DVDs, and she now has a lot of our home movies on DVDs. Because my mother very much had an old school, my comedian friends used to call it the Saved by the Bell camera, because for a period of time, my mother would use that camera to record sets for me, because I would have my mother come to shows when I was first starting out to record me on stage and look at the videos, see how I did. And then as I got older, I decided to put them online, some of them, although sadly those videos are not on my YouTube channel anymore because I've gotten better with my stand-up and realized I didn't want those videos to ever see the light of day. Or if we still have them, maybe they will one day when my career really takes off. We do a whole documentary about my life that doesn't involve me eating a car. Maybe we'll do that. But yeah, I know how that it's like. My mother constantly recorded me when I was a kid. So that's why millennials were so comfortable in front of the camera. And I think that also explains why now that we have iPhones and we take selfies and we look at ourselves in the camera and we do Facebook Lives and Instagram Lives and YouTube Lives and everything else, the reason we do so much of this is because we're so used to being on camera, we become addicted. And as the crowds grow in Times Square, MTV selects the most die-hard fans to become an in-studio audience. It's a chance to be on TV and get up close and personal with their pop music idols. And the kids just can't get enough. 5,000 kids were in Times Square when Backstreet Boys appeared on the show. So they were only looking for the die-hard fans. And really, that's what you want as an in-studio audience. You want people that are there to genuinely be part of the show. You don't want someone that's just there for 15 minutes of fame. Because if they're just there for 15 minutes of fame, it's going to come off as phony and it's going to make things uncomfortable. You want people that want to be part of the show genuinely. And again, this was where a lot of the stars were coming through. So when Backstreet Boys comes out, 5,000 kids go. Because back then, the Backstreet Boys sat on top of the boy band mountain. Of all the boy bands, no disrespect to NSYNC, but the Backstreet Boys were on top of the mountain. Now granted, when I was a child, when I was growing up during this time, the Backstreet Boys were not popular amongst guys. It was only girls who liked the Backstreet Boys. In fact, if you were a guy back then and you called yourself a Backstreet Boys fan, people automatically assumed you were gay. That's how crazy it was. Like, it was almost a sin as a boy, as a man, to be a Backstreet Boys fan. Today, it's not a big deal. Mostly because modern music today is so fucking terrible, the Backstreet Boys have the respect of everyone of my generation. Because now we can actually respect the fact that at least these guys can sing. At least these guys have talent. And the Backstreet Boys do have talent. And they actually are good. And I was a fan. I listened to their music. And of course, they got a resurgence with the Slash Street Boys and the Merkins doing their parody songs. So I'm glad the Backstreet Boys are finally getting their due. TRL supercharges fandom to levels not seen since Elvis and the Beatles. Between 2:30 and 4:30, they didn't want to leave the building because it was pure insanity and you couldn't even get down the sidewalk. So that's when TRL aired, between that time frame. And people wanted to stay there. People wanted to meet the artists. It was a huge deal to be part of TRL. Because again, it gave kids a voice and it allowed them to see pop stars that they idolized. At the turn of the millennium, America's teens had become obsessed with TRL. With no internet, it was the only source to find the top 10 videos of the day, week, or month. Over 850,000 kids tune in each day to find out, with hundreds more making the pilgrimage to Times Square to gawk at celebrities through the studio's enormous windows. So they had 850,000 kids watching on TV and a huge crowd outside, because obviously not everybody can make it to Times Square. Lord knows I couldn't. Granted, I lived in New Jersey, but I didn't have a driver's license yet, so I wasn't able to get in a car with a bunch of friends and drive down there to go to Times Square and be part of the excitement. Now, if I lived in the city in New York, I probably would have gone out there and been a part of it. I would have walked, I would have took the subway, I would have found a way to get down there, but sadly that was not the case, but not a big deal. But it's true. Keep in mind, the internet didn't exist yet. There was no YouTube. There was no social media. The World Wide Web was somewhat there, but it wasn't what it is today. The web was very basic. It didn't have the luxury of doing all this. So the only way to find the top 10 videos of the day, week, or month was to turn on MTV. When you got home from school, you got in front of the TV and watched it. It got so out of control that the New York City Police Department would make them lower the blinds if the crowd started blocking the flow of traffic. So now the cops have to step in, which from the fan perspective, I get it. It sucks. But now as an adult, I can understand where the cops are coming from on that one. Because obviously, you don't want to block the flow of traffic. New York City traffic is already goddamn ridiculous enough as it is. It already pisses people off. So I can understand being an adult, seeing all these people in Times Square and going, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Especially when as an adult, you're not listening to most of these artists. Again, the older generation didn't give a shit about a lot of these pop stars. They were too busy listening to their musicians from their era. Then MTV further ramps up the Times Square TRL fans by offering one of them a chance to become an even bigger part of the show. The show was called VJ for a Day. They would cast people and lower it down to 3 finalists who would have to ask Carson some provocative questions. Now, by provocative, they don't mean sexual. They mean like just off the wall questions. Like, for example, if you found out you were adopted, what artist would you hope was your real parent? Now that question was asked by Hallery Burton Morgan. She won the prize of doing red carpet interviews at the VMAs. So she became a VJ for a day and got to do the red carpet interviews at the Video Music Awards, which back then was a big fucking deal. So this launched Hallery Burton Morgan's career, because VJ for a Day launches a career because Hillary gets a regular gig on the show. So she goes from being a VJ for a day to being a VJ period. So she now has a job. She went down to New York, she shot her shot and got the job and was able to get a regular gig and make some good money off of it. And that is one of those crazy moments where you get to actually be part of the show, make a living, and she now has a job right out of school. I don't even know if she was still in school. But one thing was certain, she became a star, which goes to show, take every opportunity that comes your way. You never know if it might be the thing that blows you up. She also lands a second MTV gig hosting her own alternative music show called Beat Seekers. So now she gets her own thing. So she's doing the VJ stuff with Carson, but then gets to become a host in her own right. And between that and TRL, Hillary proves adept at reining in the madness of Times Square. Sometimes she saw cab drivers getting in fistfights, and one time the naked cowboy blocked her shot. Also, she had fans who were unhinged getting too excited. And she was able to prove that she could calm people down and adapt to what was going on around her. And the naked cowboy and everything else, which thank God Derek's not here. He'd be marking out about the naked cowboy and we'd hear naked cowboy stuff for the next 30 fucking minutes. For MTV, overzealous fans are the price of doing business. The show's phenomenal success is tied to their participation. TRL empowers its young audience to decide the fate of musicians and the profits of record companies by picking which songs get airplay. So, as crazy as these fans are, they need them. Now, obviously, if things get too hectic, they will intervene and keep everybody safe, but they're not going to condemn these overzealous fans. Because these fans are literally the lifeblood of TRL. This is the ultimate fan empowerment that you see on television. Because everything is dictated by them. The people get a choice. And it allows teenagers to have a voice long before their voice is allowed to matter. Keep in mind, they're teenagers. They actually get to have a say in something. Because, let's be honest, if you're under the age of 18, you can have whatever political beliefs you want. But ultimately, your opinion doesn't matter because you can't vote. Until you're actually old enough to cast your vote, your opinion is just an opinion. It has no value. Here, if you're under 18, your opinion has value. MTV values your opinion, at least during this time. You held the fate of a musician's career in your hands, so they had to appeal to you. They had no choice but to be nice to you. And most musicians, they are. Because that's usually the rule of any celebrity, is the people you're supposed to be the most kind to are children and the elderly. Everybody else, if they're rude to you, you can tell them to fuck off. The kids had the power, and they weren't used to people caring what they thought, as I mentioned before. TRL did, and in its first 2 years, fans award 80% of all daily number ones to only 3 bands. NSYNC, 98 Degrees, and the Backstreet Boys. The remaining spots go to top princesses. So, NSYNC, 98 Degrees, and the Backstreet Boys were the ones that were holding the number 1 spots. And it would rotate amongst those 3. So they were blowing up because of TRL. It made their careers. It put all 3 of those bands on the map. And again, when you're a kid, no one cares what you think. Really. Adults really don't care what you think. And I'm probably going to put myself on blast here because, as I mentioned on last week's show, I'm a real motherfucker. I get it because I don't really care what the younger generation thinks either. At least on world events. Like, as a 37-year-old man, or at least I will be the time that I'm recording this, I'm definitely planning to have these out before I turn 38. But if I don't, then you'll see a little thing on the screen that says 38 years old now. But as a 37-year-old, if I talk to somebody in their 20s, or I'm talking to a teenager, I could give a fuck less what they think about world issues. I don't want somebody younger than me telling me how the world works or how bad life is, because life hasn't even begun to fuck them yet. But by that same token, I am also well aware that people in their 50s and their 60s and up, they don't give a fuck what I think. They don't want to hear shit from me. Because as bad as I think my life might be, they know more shit. They've been through way worse than I could ever go through. So I get that logic. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm above everybody and think, oh, I care what the younger generation thinks. I don't give a shit. Really, when it comes to the younger generation, all I care about is this. Do you like this show? Do you like Vinny Bucci? Yes or no? That's really the only thing I care about. But again, kids are not used to having their opinions be valued. So when someone comes along and values their opinion, they gravitate to that. And that's why my generation gravitated to TRL. Because they cared about my opinion, at least on music. Backstreet Boys admit that TRL made them, and they hope that other artists realize how major TRL is for their careers. They do. It's a material world, and established artists see TRL as a way to reach the kids buying their records. They knew they had made it when Madonna called them and said she wanted to be on TRL. So the Backstreet Boys openly admit that if it wasn't for TRL, they wouldn't be famous. Their careers were built off of getting #1 hits with As Long As You Love Me, Quit Playing Games With My Heart, Backstreet's Back, I Want It That Way, Shape of My Heart, Show Me the Meaning of Being Lonely, Larger Than Life, The Call, Get Down, We've Got It Going On. These guys had these music videos and people voted for them all the time, and they became stars because of it. And it gets so crazy, Madonna now wants to be a part of it. Keep in mind, Madonna is already a big star. Madonna's been a star since the 80s. Madonna did not need TRL to elevate her career, but she was smart enough to know, I know it's a weird thing to say because Madonna's anything but smart today. She's off the fucking rails. But back then, Madonna was smart enough to know that TRL could make her continue to be relevant. Because you can be famous and not be relevant, because you're famous to a different generation. But if the younger generation sees you as irrelevant, they don't really give a shit. But Madonna knew, I can be relevant if I stay on TRL. If I go on TRL, people know that I'm still around, that I'm talented, I can reach this younger generation, and they'll buy my records. Even Prince wanted to be on TRL because he knew if you were on the countdown, your record sales rose. That's the thing. If you were on the countdown, you sold records. Because back then, CDs were still on sale. And again, you did not have the luxury of going on YouTube, making a playlist. There were no iPods. Napster wasn't a thing yet. There was no way of downloading music yet. You had to go buy a CD to listen to it on a regular basis whenever you want. Because you also didn't have the luxury of clicking on a music video and watching it whenever you damn well please. You saw it once on TV, and then you had to wait for it to come back on again as if it was a radio station. So you had to have the CD so you can listen to the song whenever you want, as many times as you want. Even Kid Rock got rich and famous from it. So Kid Rock made it because of TRL. Ball with the Ball, Cowboy, American Badass, God Knows Why, Cocky, You Never Met a Motherfucker Quite Like Me. They knew it could make or break careers, and this drives record companies to do what they can to manipulate the voting process by actively encouraging fans of the recording artists to vote early and often. They would give away prizes like t-shirts or get entered into a contest to meet the artist. For example, Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit. They would tell Limp Bizkit fans, hey, go online and vote for Limp Bizkit's latest music video. If you do, you can get a chance to meet Fred Durst. And I'm going to be brutally honest. If back then there was a chance for me to go to a Limp Bizkit concert and meet Fred Durst, I'd have been calling every day. My parents' phone bill would have went sky high if I knew that back then. Now, MTV fights back by trying to better secure the voting process. But the network underestimates how far record companies will go to game the system. There was a company that was actually hired by record labels to call in a TRL to get their artists on, and thus flooding their inbox with requests for these certain artists. It was bots before bots was a thing. They were cheating and rigging the system. Because again, and I touched on this last week, this is what corporations do. This is what record labels do. They want to be in control of everything. They want to own you. They want to own their artist. They want to own everything. And they want more for them and less for everybody else, including the artists signed to their label. They will do whatever they have to do to make money. And they will slit your throat to make a quick buck. And this is basically what they're trying to do here. They're now trying to rig this system to get their artists on so they can make the money from the record sales. Because they don't care about the younger generation having a voice. They don't care if their artist can sing or not. All they care about is making money. And that's why they say money is the root of all evil. Because people will do evil, dastardly, deplorable things to make money. Whether it's because they're greedy or because they got bills to pay and they got no other way to pay them. As TRL's power to make or break careers grows, so does the pressure on performers to make their appearances totally unforgettable no matter what it takes. So when they make appearances on TRL, they're trying to stand out. They're trying to make sure those fans walk away happy. If they gotta shake hands, they will shake hands. If they gotta give hugs, they will give hugs. If they gotta give a girl a little kiss on the cheek just to make her day, they will do it in order to get those fans to like them. And just to be clear, when I say kiss on the cheek, I mean if the girl asks for a kiss and the guy gives it to him, I was going to kiss him on the cheek because a kiss on the cheek is not as creepy. By 2001, Total Request Live is no longer just reporting on pop culture. It has become a part of pop culture. People make jokes about it, and Eminem mentions it in one of his songs. And of course, that's the song, White America, I could be one of your kids. White America, little Eric looks just like this. White America, Erica loves my shit. I go to TRL, look how many hugs I get. And anyone who wants to be someone is stopping by the studio on the regular. It became the major PR stop in New York. Today's Show, TRL, Letterman, Leno, Conan. Celebrities were interactive with the fans as they high-fived and took pictures with them. So TRL was like the afternoon appearance for celebrities. They would come in the morning, do the Today Show, then they'd jet over the TRL, and then later they would do either David Letterman, Jay Leno, or Conan O'Brien, depending on which talk show they were going on. Because keep in mind, back then, these were the guys hosting the shows. Jay Leno was the Tonight Show host before Jimmy Fallon showed up. David Letterman was running the show before Conan took over, and then it was Jimmy Fallon, and then it was Seth Meyers, and then, of course, Conan going to TBS. So TRL became a regular appearance like, hey, we got to make sure we stop in here because this is where the action is. And at the center of this pop culture circus is its ringleader, Carson Daly. He could handle any curveball thrown at him and could talk to a random kid off the street the exact same way he talked to Madonna. He made everyone he talked to feel like they were the center of attention, which is the key thing you want to be if you are a host. If you're a host of a talk show, if you're doing man on the street stuff, if you got a personality, if you make the person you talk to feel like they're the center of attention, you can have a great interview. That's the best way to do those kinds of interviews. Make them feel like they're the center of attention. Make them feel welcome. And most importantly, listen. When you ask a question and the person's answering it, don't just wait to talk. Really listen to what they're saying. Let them have their moment. Let them become engaged with you, and you'll be a better host. Carson became a celebrity himself and started hanging out with Fred Durst, Snoop Dogg, and Justin Timberlake. He also dated Jennifer Love Hewitt and Tara Reid, who he later becomes engaged to. So now Carson Daly is rubbing shoulders with Hollywood. That's also another Eminem story there, where he talks about in The Real Slim Shady. You think I give a damn about a Grammy? Half of you critics can't even stomach me, let alone stand me. But Slim, what if you win? Wouldn't it be weird? Why? So you guys just lie to get me here? So y'all can sit me here next to Britney Spears? Shit, Christina Aguilera better switch me chairs so I can sit next to Carson Daly and Fred Durst. Hear them argue over who she gave head to first. Little bitch, put me on blast on MTV. Yeah, he's cute, but I think he's married to Kim. Hee. I should download her audio on MP3 and show the whole world how you gave Eminem VD. I'm sick of you little girl and boy groups. All you do is ignore me. So I have been sent here to destroy you. And there's a million of us just like me, who cuss like me, who just don't give a fuck like me, who dress like me, walk, talk, and act like me. It just might be the next best thing, but not quite me. And of course, he's dating Hollywood starlets. Because back in this time, Jennifer Love Hewitt and Tara Reid are on top of their game. And he's engaged to Tara Reid. And after a short engagement, the couple splits, and with the press attention, Carson swears off public relationships for good. So basically, he decides after this, with all the attention and all the bullshit and all the paparazzi, more on that in a later episode, Carson's just like, I'm not doing any more public relationships anymore. The next girl I date's going to be on the DL. She might not even be a celebrity. And it's not just Carson struggling with fame. All the show's VJs become drawing attention for better or worse. Celebrity was something they struggled with because it was hard for them to deal with people feeling entitled to take pictures of you whenever they want, regardless of how you feel about it. Hillary starts getting fan mail about her feet. It started out as just asking for an autograph, but then the guy made crazy demands like wear open-toed shoes, paint your toenails red, pump your left foot up and down 3 times so I know that you're signal. And then the guy wanted to cut them off. It was fucking weird. Like, this is the thing. When you become a celebrity, you meet all kinds of fans. fans who genuinely love you and fans who are obsessed with you, who are mentally challenged, who become infatuated with you so much they feel like they know you and they feel like they're entitled to be around you. Because that's the price of fame, is if you go out in public and you're famous, people are going to take pictures of you. People are going to come up to you and ask for an autograph. If you can't handle that, A, don't be famous, and B, if you are famous, don't leave your house. Just order DoorDash and eat at home. Every time you leave that house, it's going to happen. Now, just because it's going to happen doesn't mean that if a fan gets too obsessed and cross the line that you can't defend yourself. The live nature of the show means that back in the studio, Carson also has to deal with some uncomfortable situations. Mariah Carey showed up with an ice cream cart. She takes off her shirt to reveal a tight outfit on. And this is where Mariah Carey starts strip teasing on TRL. Now, she's wearing a tight outfit. She's not completely naked, but it's still very inappropriate in a room full of teenagers. Because back then, when people did inappropriate shit like this in front of children, it was viewed as wrong. Nowadays, it's just expression. Like, again, we used to frown upon shit like this. Now it's gather around, children. It's time for Drag Queen Story Hour. Don't even get me started on that shit. A week after her surprising appearance on TRL, Carey is hospitalized for exhaustion. Tabloids claim she had a complete mental breakdown. Carey will later admit to having bipolar disorder. So, at the time, Mariah Carey was bipolar. She might still be, I don't know. Hopefully she got medication for that shit. But back then, we didn't know. See, that's the thing we learned about celebrities way later on, is that some of them are dealing with mental health problems. But back then, we didn't know about it, and nobody was really looking for it back then. So when you went crazy, we were just like, you're fucking crazy. You're insane. You're fucked in the head. You need therapy. You need a fucking padded room. That's why I love the fact that today, mental health is something we take very seriously. When she returns to TRL a few years later, she seems especially careful with how she presents herself, even off camera. She is smiling and talking as if she's being filmed. Cutest went over to tell her, we're not rolling right now. We're just preparing for the show so you can relax. Mariah says, well, you never know when the camera's going to be on, though. And that is a perfect metaphor, not just for celebrities, but where we are as a society today. Once you have an embarrassing moment on camera, you are walking on eggshells the rest of your life. Even today, people walk on eggshells. Everybody's on a weird, fake behavior because everybody's waiting for you to say or do something that they can catch on camera and they can put everywhere and they can label you as whatever they want and destroy your life. Even on social media, everybody has to be fake. Like, hey, don't post how you really feel about this. It could affect your job and it could affect your fan base. So you got to post all this other stuff. Like, people are not able to truly relax and be comfortable and be themselves, especially if you're a celebrity. When you're a celebrity, everybody's out to get you. She's right to be careful because at TRL, the cameras are almost always rolling. You had to be constantly on and you had nowhere to hide. So yeah, you got to be careful because cameras are always rolling. When you're out in public, you got to mind your P's and Q's. You got to be entertaining. You got to be self. You got to be vigilant. And that's what I always am. I am vigilant. I am suspicious of fucking everyone. It's also part of the reasons why I don't really drink anymore. Because drinking makes you loosen up. Drinking lets you cut loose. And I don't want to be loosened up and I don't want to be cut loose. I want to be wound up as tight as possible because I don't trust these motherfuckers. You got to be careful with shit. And that's why it's hard for us as people to really get to know each other. Because everybody has to hide who they are in order to be accepted. In September of 2001, the nation is in a state of shock after the terrorist attack just 50 blocks from TRL's Times Square studio. TRL decided to respond to this and be there for the youth of America. So obviously they're referring to 9/11 when the towers went down, when the planes hit the building, and it was 50 blocks away from the TRL studio. And obviously the nation was rocked by this attack, but nobody felt it more than the people in the tri-state area. Because I remember when 9/11 happened, I was in New Jersey. That's where I was living. And I had just gotten out of gym class. And for gym class, we went outside. So we had no idea what was going on as we were outside. And I remember going to my locker, my gym locker, throwing in my gym clothes, putting on my regular clothes, spraying deodorant, and walking to class. As I'm walking to class, I see people in the hallway freaking out, and I see everybody crying. And I have no idea what's going on because I didn't have any friends walking with me to class. I mean, I had friends, they just had different periods, and I wasn't able to actually walk to class with them. So the next class I'm going to, ironically, is U.S. history. I walk in, and we had a TV in the corner of the classroom. There was one small black TV, regular size TV. And we would watch, if there was a movie, they put the VCR, that's how far back this goes, and we'd be watching stuff on there, and they had the news on. And I saw the plane hit the building, the second plane. And at first, I thought it was a movie, until I saw the news scroll at the bottom, and I realized, oh shit, this really happened. And the reason people were crying was because a lot of the kids in my school, some of them, they had family members that worked in New York City. And some of them actually worked at the Trade Center. And they were either hospitalized or they died. And it was a horrific time. So TRL decided, hey, we're not gonna shut the show down. Let's be there to talk to the youth. And that is not only a smart thing to do, it was a brave thing to do. Because you're in New York City. You're in New York City, your first reaction is get the fuck out. But Carson Daly and everybody there is like, no, the youth trusts us. They believe in us. We have to speak to them. We have to be there for them the way they've been there for us. And to me, that's heroic. Now, obviously, it's not more heroic than the police department and the fire department who helped people and gave their lives on 9/11. I am not putting them in the same category as the police and fire department, so please don't comment with that below. I'm just saying it was brave and heroic of TRL to be there for the youth of America, while the police department and the fire department were there for the citizens of New York. 2 days after the Trade Center collapse, while the city's late night shows remained dark, TRL goes back on the air. All other MTV programming was suspended. The show was more toned down. They had kids in the audience and callers in live to talk about their experience and what happened. So they shut down all the other MTV shows and just had TRL. And instead of Carson Daly being upbeat and talking about crazy shit, he was calm, he was serious, and instead of airing music videos, they just talked to people about how they were dealing with 9/11, what they were thinking, what they were feeling. Did they have any family members that may have gotten hurt? Did they have family members that were part of the police and fire department that were alive but still saved people? It was really a great time because, again, it gave kids a place to feel comfortable. And that's hard to do because kids, for the most part, are not really good at opening up to people. Although some are just chatterboxes that can go on, but others have a hard time talking about stuff. Most of them won't even confide in their parents. And it's not necessarily that the parents are bad. It's just that some kids just don't want to talk to their parents about stuff. And I know that. When I was a kid, there was things I didn't want to confide in my parents about. That's what I had my friends for. So the fact that TRL could be that saving grace for children deserves a lot of credit. More credit than they actually get. It helped a lot of kids get through a tough time, but not without some risk to the show's staff and fans. They knew by going live they were at risk, especially with the threat of anthrax throughout the city and subways. They also feared bombs in trash cans and mailboxes. So again, they are putting their lives on the line by doing this. Because everyone was freaking out over anthrax. For a long time, people were scared to open their mail because they thought there's white powder in envelopes. I remember after 9/11, my dad had a flight because my dad traveled for work. He had to get on a flight the next day, and my mother didn't want him to go. I remember my mother was at home. She was vacuuming the carpet over and over and over again. Like, even though it was clean, she just kept vacuuming and vacuuming because she didn't want to think about it, and she was waiting for the phone to ring. My dad was supposed to call her the second that plane fucking landed. But I remember my dad saying, I'm not going to let the terrorists scare me. I'm not going to let them win. I got a job to do. I got a family to take care of. I'm getting on the fucking plane. If this is the way I go, then this is the way I go. That was my father's mentality. TRL succeeded by combining upbeat pop videos with Carson's loose, friendly, in-studio interaction with celebrities. But after the horrors of 9/11, TRL's audience seemed to want something with a bit more edge, real, or manufactured. So now, the upbeat stuff is not cutting it anymore because kids are now at a point where we're not really looking to be excited anymore. Like, we're not in a happy mood. If anything, we're a lot more depressed. Because an attack like that, it hurts your spirit. It shakes you up. It makes you realize that the world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's not Candyland. Reality shows like Survivor and The Bachelor, with their contrived confrontations, seem to better meet the new mood of the country. Now, obviously, we're going to touch on The Bachelor in a few weeks, so I'm not going to go into that, but there is definitely a lot of truth to that, and we cover that in that episode, myself and Derek Shapiro. In its drive to stay relevant, MTV gambles on its own celebrity reality show, The Osbournes. People felt they had a right to know what celebrities were doing in their personal lives. And this set the tone for so many family-related reality shows that would later come out, like Hogan Knows Best and other shows I can't think of off the top of my head, but The Osbournes was definitely that show. Ozzy, Sharon, Jack, and Kelly. I also know that it launched Kelly Osbourne's music career because I know she did a cover of the song Keepin' My Baby by Madonna, and it was actually very good. In fact, I remember hearing Kelly's version before Madonna's version, so I didn't even know that was her song until my dad told me years later. But of course, Ozzy, we got to see what a crazy, sick motherfucker he is, and just him being an old man walking around his house. Sharon! And the dog just pissed all over the fucking carpet. And they just cussed at each other all fucking day. So yeah, The Osbournes was another reality show that MTV came up with in addition to The Real World. But this is where MTV is now starting to get away from the music and start bringing in shows. And this is where the music starts to fade out. Because more MTV reality shows follow, changing what it means and what it takes to be a celebrity. Like The Newlyweds with Nick and Jessica. And of course, by that I mean Nick Lachey and Jessica Simpson, where Jessica Simpson, I can't tell if she was working the cameras or if she really is or was a dumb blonde back then. Because she would say the stupidest shit and people just look at her like, oh my God, she's fucking nuts. TRL, to try and hold its audience close, moves away from music, adding more celebrity-based games and competitions like you'd see on reality shows. Now, people complain that they stopped playing music, but people weren't watching when they were playing music. It didn't matter how big the celebrities were. Fans needed more to feel engaged. So, again, this is the problem. You can get mad when they stop playing music, but if you're not watching when the music's playing, they're going to stop doing it. That's what TV shows, companies, content creators, that's what they do. If you're not watching what they're doing, but they see you more engaged with these type of topics, they're going to pivot to get your attention, which is a catch-22. On the one hand, you lose your identity. But on the other hand, you're going to get more people to watch because that's what you're into. You're watching reality shows with celebrities on them. That tells them you want to see more celebrities. So we're going to see more celebrities. We're going to put more of that on. But again, the fans also need to feel engaged. And that was the problem. The fans didn't feel they were engaging with the product anymore, which is what they loved. You can be the biggest celebrity in the world, but if I'm being neglected, I ain't gonna give a fuck how big this celebrity is. Meanwhile, popular music tastes are evolving. Pop music goes down in popularity and NSYNC breaks up, which is another big moment. NSYNC breaking up, Justin Timberlake going solo, and the rest of them disappearing. For the artists, these changes proved jarring. Chris Kirkpatrick soon realized he had to adapt and find a way to live his life without the fame and crazy schedule. Because Chris Kirkpatrick went into obscurity. Joey Fatone went into obscurity. JC tried to have a solo career, but he went into obscurity. And Lance Bass, he went into obscurity before he would later come out of the closet and reveal he was gay. Then he got popular again. But Justin Timberlake was the only one to break out and become a star. Carson Daly is also ready to adapt and move on from TRL. In 2002, Carson lands a late-night hosting gig on NBC called Last Call with Carson Daly, which put him behind Fallon and Conan during that brief time when Conan was the host of The Tonight Show. He tries splitting his time between both shows, but the following year, Carson quits TRL because he realizes TRL is not working anymore. It's not fun anymore. He's got this talk show and he wants to move on and find something else, which sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta get off the sinking ship. They tried using Vanessa, Lala, Hillary, Damien, Cutis, and Susie Castillo collectively to replace Carson Daly. But it turns out less might have been more. The rotating hosts don't revive the show's popularity. Because as great and talented as these VJs were, they weren't Carson. Carson was the man. Carson was the leader of the band. Nobody could steer the ship like him. Once he left, the show was dead. By mid-decade, TRL's ratings have dropped 50%, and a technological breakthrough is about to put TRL down for the count. And here it is. In the early 2000s, technology changes the music biz. Music sharing software, MP3 players, and social media sites like MySpace and YouTube start giving kids more places to go for their pop culture fix. TRL simply can't compete. They can now watch music videos whenever they want, so TRL wasn't needed. And that's what I said earlier. TRL was the main source. Once YouTube showed up and you can watch music videos on your YouTube channel with your YouTube profile, you can now go download MP3s, go on music sharing stuff. Napster came around as well. With all these sites now available, TRL wasn't needed. I don't need you to watch these videos. I don't need to vote for a video in order to see it. I can watch Backstreet Boys, 98 Degrees, NSYNC, or whoever the latest star is. I can go there right now. I can watch a music video right here, right now. I don't need TRL. So TRL no longer served a purpose. And unfortunately, that's what happened. When modern technology comes in, other things become obsolete. That's why you hear a lot of people complain about certain things going, you're going to take away jobs from these other people. But if that's what direction the world is going, they got to do that. And then the person who has that job, they may have to find another one. But I also believe that if you're going to install something that's going to take somebody else's job, you should be able to put them in a place where they can still serve the company. TRL isn't just losing viewers. In 2003, the one-time VJ for a Day lands a lead role on the WB's One Tree Hill. For 2 years, Hillary tries juggling both gigs before deciding to leave TRL. A year later, Cutis also says goodbye to MTV. So Hillary got on One Tree Hill and decided to move on. Of course, realizing that TRL did put her on the map, she had a chance to move on and took it. Because again, TRL was a sinking ship. She got to do One Tree Hill for 6 seasons and did a great job. She also did a lot of multiple movies like Our Very Own, The List, Normal Adolescent Behavior, Solstice, The Secret Life of Bees, The True Love Tale of Boyfriend and Girlfriend, Bloodworth, Black Eyed Dog, Growing Up Smith, 618 to Omaha. She also did other TV shows. Becoming Presents Wannabe, Dawson's Creek. She made a cameo appearance there. She also did MTV's Iced Out New Year's Eve, MTV Does Miami, MTV Diary, The Real World Las Vegas, Pepsi Smash, Unscripted, Little Britain USA, White Collar. She did 22 episodes. She had a main role in season 3, while also having a recurring role in seasons 2 and 4. Castle, Naughty or Nice, Greg's Anatomy, 1 episode. Hostages, Christmas on the Bayou, Forever, Surprised by Love, Extant, Last Chance for Christmas, Togetherness, Summer Villa, Lethal Weapon, The Christmas Contract, The Christmas Wish, Friday Night In with the Morgans, Council of Dads, Dear Christmas, The Walking Dead, 1 episode. True Crime Story, It Couldn't Happen Here. She hosted that for 7 episodes. And of course, Good Sam. These were her multiple TV and film appearances that Hillary did in her life, and all of it came as a result of her time on MTV, that she was able to change her life. TRL tries to evolve with the times, but it's too little too late. They learned you can't compete with a beast, which is what social media is. And when Justin Bieber becomes a global megastar after blowing up on YouTube instead of TRL, it forces MTV to finally accept the irrelevance of its long-running countdown show. So Justin Bieber put the final nail in TRL's coffin. As if my generation needed another reason to hate Justin Bieber, here it fucking is. And of course, he blew up on YouTube with the song, Baby, 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 oh. MTV finally pulls the plug in 2008 after 2,247 episodes, but not without throwing one last party. Everyone, including Carson, came back for the party. Years later, MTV tries to reboot TRL, but it doesn't work. So TRL finally goes away. They briefly tried to bring it back, but again, it doesn't work because you can't have a music video countdown show when people can see music videos whenever they want. And also, celebrities nowadays, nobody really gives a shit about them anymore. they're not the cool club anymore. So no one really cares if they meet them or not. Because a lot of them are, you find out, are fucking scumbags. And also, with the power of social media, you can interact and chat with celebrities or people all you want. So TRL was a great thing, but it outlived its usefulness. TRL shaped a decade of music, and Carson was one of the presenters when NSYNC got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame because he helped put them on the map in America. So even though TRL has outlived its usefulness, the fact remains it's still a staple in music. It's a staple in MTV, and it's a staple in the generation of the 2000s. It shaped everything we know and love today. That's why Carson Daly got to present NSYNC with their star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Because again, all the pop stars that we grew up with and know and love, TRL put them on the map. Carson Daly, as the host, put all these guys on the map. TRL became the hot spot. TRL defined a generation. And even though they're gone, they're not forgotten. And the one thing I love about this episode is getting to relive the TRL moments and realizing as an adult how great it truly was. And I know there were two artists mentioned here that I didn't sing a song from. So I guess I'll do that. So I'll start with Madonna. When you call my name, it's like a little prayer. I'm down on my knees. I want to take you there in the midnight hour. I can feel your power just like a prayer. You know I'll take you there. And I don't know a lot of Prince songs off the top of my head, so I'll just say, Purple Rain, Purple Rain. And that, ladies and gentlemen, will wrap up this episode of Boochcast Reviews, Darkside of the 2000s. I thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys tune in next week. I'll be joined by the Broke Soulless Ginger, Mr. Zach Scott, and we're going to be talking about one of the most talented actresses on the planet who also had a massive fall from grace. And we're going to go into all of it next week. And of course, I'm talking about the one and only Lindsay Lohan, Star Interrupted, coming up next week here on the Boochcast. So make sure you guys follow us on all of our podcast platforms. The link is down in the description box below. Follow us on our social media platforms. The link is down in the description box below. You can also support the Boochcast. Go to podcasters.spotify.com/pod/shows/the Boochcast/support. That link will be down in the description box below. And of course, as always, hit the subscribe button and ring that bell to be notified so you never miss another episode of Boochcast Reviews Darkside of the 2000s, as well as other additional Boochcast YouTube content. We'll talk to you guys next time. Until then, pizza, baby!